Welcome to Evolve to Succeed, the podcast that brings together entrepreneurs, founders, business leaders and experts to talk about their journeys and explore the link between personal and business success. I'm your host, Warren Munson, founder of Evolve, a coaching, training and development company focused on enabling business and personal success and creating a community of like-minded individuals. Whether that be through our peer groups, one-to-one coaching, our training and development programs for you and your teams, or through our content and events, our mission is to get the best out of each individual and inspire them to be better both in life and in business. If you want to learn more about Evolve, including our beautiful co-working space in Ashley Cross in Poole, then please go to evolvemembers.com, where you'll find great content, insights, details of all of our services, and also information on our forthcoming events. For now though, let's get on with the show. The word inspiring is one that gets thrown around a lot, but this week's guest embodies everything it means to be inspirational. Aside from that, he is also the personification of bravery, resilience, and overcoming unimaginable challenges. The man I'm talking about is Toby Gutteridge, the elite Special Forces soldier who was paralysed from the neck down after being shot while on duty in Afghanistan in 2009. He recently released a book titled Never Will I Die that recounts a difficult childhood in South Africa, his trajectory into the Special Forces, and of course his miraculous survival and the subsequent fallout of such a profoundly life-changing incident. Toby is an extraordinary individual who has taken a dramatic and traumatic life event and turned it into something that has only increased his inner drive and passion for being alive. I don't want to give too much away about our conversation, except to say it's certainly an emotional one that will hopefully act as a reminder of the determination of the human spirit and your own true potential. Please enjoy this very special episode. Welcome, Toby, to the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
Thank you for having me, Warren. It's a pleasure.
I've been really wanting to have this conversation with you. We've known each other from some time. I recently read your book, Never Will I Die. Great book. Listeners, just go buy a copy. Go to Amazon now. Go buy a copy. And it was through, reading that book, I started perhaps to understand you and your journey better. And, and what framed you and what made you, and, not just what's happened post-accident, but that life pre the accident and pre your military time. So I think we're going to split our conversation into sort of 4 segments, listeners. We're going to talk about Toby growing up, pre-military, his military life, Toby's accident, and importantly, life now, and what Toby's up to now, because there's some exciting stuff going on. So Toby, we should want to talk about some comments you make in your book about those early years you had, the family, it being a kind of unsettled environment. You not only moved house frequently in your childhood, you moved countries frequently. And you describe yourself as a delinquent in your childhood and your teens. When you look back now, how do you think those challenging times growing up have framed you as an individual?
Well, when I wrote the book, first off, I wanted it to be brutally honest and come from the heart. It's not a book that's made up. It's really a genuine book. So if you do want to read it, it's a genuine read. But going back to your question, I did have a pretty, I wouldn't say traumatic childhood, just a very different childhood, and it did shape me in a certain way. Moving around a lot is difficult as a child, and those who did have moved around a lot will know this. It's hard, and it's hard to fit in when you're at that young age, and it taught me to. It really taught me to rely on myself, to believe in myself. You have to grow up quite quick, and it's incredibly lonely. So really, I guess you get a crash course in the realities of life quite quick, and how brutal life can be. And I think that these are the things that made me quite equipped to go on to join the military and do very well in the military, was because I wasn't afraid of hardship. I wasn't afraid of being on my own. Now I was very comfortable in my own skin and confident in my own abilities, because that's what I'd done my entire childhood, you know, by trying to fit into these different groups and backing myself time and time again. So yeah, it was almost like it perfectly shaped me, really, for what was to come.
Really, yeah. It's kind of made you that resilient individual, made you independent.
Yeah, that resilient, independent person who learnt a lot of life's hard lessons at a very young age, and that, I guess, put me in front of the game.
Yeah.
And, you know, in front of my peers in terms
Strange, isn't it? Because people that do succeed in life sometimes do come from those, I won't say necessarily tough, but different or more challenging times, or they've had something in their childhood where they perhaps haven't had the idyllic childhood, but it then frames them for what's coming later in life.
I think so. I think you learn lessons that potentially others only learn later on in life.
Yeah.
And as with anything, the more practice you get at something, the better you are at it. So at a younger age, you're more equipped with the skills and the knowledge to sort of move into areas and do better than others. And business is exactly the same, you know.
Absolutely, definitely. And you talk in the book about, I suppose I'm going to say, running with the wrong crowd, getting into mischief, you know, particularly in your sort of mid to late teens. So what was, do you think, the wake-up call? Because going from that kind of life to military life is completely different. It's nearly chalk and cheese. So was there a moment, was there a wake-up call?
Yeah, it's quite strange, isn't it?
Yeah, was there a wake-up call, a moment in time when you went, Tobes, you've got to do something in your life?
I don't think it was exactly one moment in time, because I grew up. My stepdad, was in the South African military, and he served in the Angolan War. And for those of you who don't know, in the 80s and sort of early part of the 90s, South Africa was in a very brutal conflict with Angola, and they're against their communist regime. Anyway, so the military has always been a big part of my life since I can remember. Okay. You know, I had my stepdad coming home with his military bag and in his military uniform. So there was always this trend, and growing up I used to love watching, you know, military movies and things like that. So there was always this part of me that was attracted to it. And I loved playing, you know, building forts in the garden and playing, you know, armies and all these sort of things. So then there wasn't really a moment in time that told me, I need to join the military. I was always quite in favor of the military anyway. But yeah, I was running with the wrong crowd. I was rebelling. I was quite unhappy. I was at an unhappy stage in my life, which I guess all teenagers at some point go through, where they're
to a larger or smaller degree. We all go through it,
trying to find themselves and don't really know who they are. And I just felt I just happened to fall in with the wrong crowd, and what I was doing and things, even though it never ever sat right with me, it was just something that I was just going along with at the time. But it did start to get very serious at a point, and I also started growing up, and I knew I always wanted to do something special with my life, and I wanted to achieve things, and I wanted to contribute to society. So there were all these, you know, mix of emotions and thoughts going through my head as a teenager. early 20s, and it just got to the point where I thought, right, the time is right. I'm gonna make the jump. I'm gonna make the leap.
Take some strength of character,
yeah,
Toby,
and just
take a step out of a bad place and make something happen.
Exactly, and everyone else, I could see everyone else around me just sort of going through the motions, of life. And for me, I just felt that was incredibly boring, and I wanted more out of life. I wanted some excitement, and the military just held all those aspects to it. And like I said, it had always held a sort of an appeal to me. So there just came a point where I thought, enough is enough. I'm doing this. It's something I've always wanted to do, and I'm going to take that leap of faith and just go for it. And I didn't know if I was ever going to actually make it, or if I was suited for it, or if they'd even accept me into the British military. Yeah. But I thought, if I don't try, you're never going to know.
And you didn't take the easiest choice, did you, Toby, with taking the Marines route?
No. And again, this goes back to that I wanted to push myself. I wanted to challenge myself. I knew I had certain aspects where I was able to, really push myself out of my comfort zone. So the army or the navy or the air force just didn't really hold as much of an appeal as I wanted to test myself physically to see if I had what it takes. And the Royal Marine Commandos were just renowned for being, it's the longest military and arduous military training course in the world, and that's a fact. So that just struck a chord with me straight away.
Let's go do it.
Yeah. So I was like, what's the hardest thing I could possibly choose here? And yeah, that was right up there. So I thought, okay, yeah, aim high.
And that change of lifestyle and going and doing that course. Was there a moment in time on that course, or maybe there were several, where you thought, Toby, what have you done? What have I done?
Yeah, there were most days that thought crossed your mind, because it is from day one. There's no like gradual process where they sort of, coach you in nicely. It's day one is brutal. And from that, stepping off that train platform outside Lympston down at Exeter, where the Royal Marines do their training, that thought crosses your mind straight away.
Yeah. And what pushes you through at those moments in time?
Well, I mean, this is the age-old question of nature versus nurture, isn't it? What pushes you through those times?
'Cause you've got to dig deep, haven't you?
You do have to dig deep, but there's this drive, there's this fire inside you that just says, oh, I'm not going to quit. I know I've got what it takes, and it's that fire in your belly that will get you far in life, and if you apply that to most things in life, you've got to have that drive, and you've got to have that self-belief, and the things we talked about that arguably shaped me for perfectly for the military, because I'd been doing it for so long in terms of building this resilient mindset and pushing myself out of my comfort zone time and time again. So when it came to it, I just wanted to just keep pushing myself, and I didn't really know how to fail. If I'm honest, I don't like that feeling, and it's just part of my nature as a person. I set my sights on something as a goal, and
So the other bit that I'm really intrigued about after I'd read the book, and even having this conversation with you now, Toby, is you're very strong and independent of mind, and I can only imagine what you were like in your late teens, early 20s. And but the military is about teamwork, and up until that point in your life, you'd been a very independent soul. How did you find that transition to being part of a team, and because that's again about business as well.
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can be great
right.
founders and entrepreneurs, and we can go out and do these things, but we need a team around us.
Here's the strange thing about that is I loved it.
Okay, it was just
I
an immediate
absolutely
click,
loved it,
was it?
yeah, because it was actually something I was missing in my life. It was something I was totally missing in my life.
Yeah.
I had been such a loner and a lone wolf my entire life and had to do things all by myself. Then all of a sudden I came into this brotherhood, and I call it a brotherhood on purpose because it's not just a team that are there being paid to support you or have some ulterior motive. These are guys that will have your back for life, and this team of people you can rely on regardless of what time of day it is or how much they're getting paid or whatever. These guys, it's different. Yeah. And it was something I was missing my entire life. And actually it was something that drew me to the military as well, was that family, that team.
That connection that you never really had before.
I never had with a family. I never had with friends growing up. So, yeah, you'd think, oh, he must have struggled because he's used to being on his own and a single player, but no, absolutely not. It's the exact opposite. I loved it and fell right into it, and it's something really special when you've got that kind of team where you can rely on regardless,
Must be amazing.
So yeah, it's different to what people think, and I try and explain it in the book and talk about that brotherhood because it is something unique and special. So it's something you only get, I guess, in the military when it comes down to life. People your life depends on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose part of that brotherhood and that camaraderie is about the situations and the high stress environments you find yourselves in, and we will go and touch on some of those. But I'm also interested to know what you think businesses and organisations can take away from the military in terms of building great teams, because some of it is circumstance, but there is other stuff that must happen and that makes the military such a place of brotherhood, camaraderie, and such a great team. Is there some things that you reflect on that businesses could do better in terms of building teams?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the biggest one I can think of is because the military, these people, you go through such hardship with them and you build a bond that's unbreakable. And in business, it's different because the team you're working in is not forced, but you come into an environment that's in a business where people are being paid to be there. They're not there off their own choice. And the hardship is not necessarily there. So I think team building is huge. Getting teams together, going out and building relationships that are formed not only in the office, outside of the office, because then you build a connection between your employees that is genuine. It's so much more raw and genuine.
And as human beings, that's what we want in life, isn't it? It's connection.
It's connection, and that's sometimes what I think businesses are missing, especially huge corporations, and there's a huge turnover of staff. You just get people coming in, going, and it's, you definitely won't get your maximum output from a business if you haven't got that solid backbone running through the team of we're a team, we're in this together. I'm going to stick it out and I'm going to stay here. And then you don't have the problem of losing skills and losing knowledge because you've got such a high turnover of staff and these sort of problems. But there's lots of other things you can take from the military. There's many other things, certainly.
Definitely. And I suppose one of the things is in the military, there's always a mission, isn't there? There's always a goal. And sometimes in business, we're probably not as good at being given that clarity of what the business's goals are, what we're looking to set to achieve. And I think...
and how, I guess, with the military goals is that they're very... that objective becomes the sole focus, everything else is kind of put aside.
Yeah.
So when you think of maybe a business objective, people maybe don't take it as seriously, or they've got other things that might take priority, and then that objective seems to be pushed back a little bit, or doesn't become the total all-round focus of everyone, and nothing is going to get in the way until that objective is achieved, which is, in real life and in business, that's probably an unrealistic sort of comparison, because the military objectives are very serious and
very black and white.
And lives depend on it.
Yeah.
So it is quite hard to sort of make that comparison. But you can take that. You can definitely take that across to the business world. Especially when it comes to the SF side of it, where then you get the thinking man soldier. Yeah. The special forces is a total different pedigree and a different category of
individual.
Yeah, and the military itself,
So let's try and put a little bit of a timeline for our listeners on the conversation. So you went to do your Marine training. What year did you qualify? Come out of the training?
2006 was when I finished my Marines training.
Okay. And then it was, we were in mid-conflict, weren't we? So assume it was nearly finished your training, straight out.
Yeah, that's it. Straight out. We were, you're right in the middle of the height of the conflict in Afghanistan. And it was really kicking off. And for me, I didn't do all this training and come this far just to then become a driver or a chef in the military. I mean, that just wasn't why I joined the military, and it wasn't my character. I want to really push myself and see, it sounds very naive, and probably is in a way, because to say I just want to go straight out to a very, very bad conflict zone. Sounds quite naive, but it's exactly what I wanted to do, because that's what I wanted to experience, and it's where I knew I could make the biggest difference. Yeah, and it really was where I knew I could make. Yeah, that's why I joined up. It was, I wanted to see the world and see realities of life and expand what I had already learned through my childhood of the realities of life, and that it's not all cushy and it's not all roses. Life is hard and it's tough, and I wanted to experience that to the maximum.
Wow. And can you look back and remember that kind of maybe those early missions? Because I'm really interested in treating this sense of fear, because again, managing through life, everyday life, we all have fears. I mean, it's how we manage ourselves through them that gets us through life. And you're putting yourself there and the other Marines you went out there with in a high stress environment where fear must come into play.
Definitely. So, yeah.
And how did you counter that fear?
Fear is like anything else. The more you're exposed to it, the more your brain builds neurons that make you more resilient to it. And it's about that exposure. And I remember the first time I was in an actual conflict, an actual war battle, where the bullets were flying, and it was a different category of fear. I'd experienced fear in growing up in South Africa and certain other parts of my younger years, but this was now taking it to the next level, where people were deliberately trying to kill you, and you have to compartmentalize that fear. You have to separate it, because it can become overwhelming very quickly, and I've seen it happen to people where it becomes too overwhelming and they haven't grasped it grasped it, and they're potentially don't have the exposure to it. You know, it's that shock of war, that shock of being straight in it, straight off, and it's a scary thing. But the way I find best to deal with fear is if you can, is to be exposed to it is as easy as possible, and to just build your way up onto it. And you get these, what they call, you can see someone who's like who's been in war, they're out there for a while because they're used to it and they've become resilient to it, and they've learned how to compartmentalize it and separate it and deal with it on another level.
It's interesting, isn't it?
It's fascinating. But the brain is one of those adaptable, things that the more you're exposed to something, the better you get at dealing with it. The problem with war is that it comes at such a pace. It comes at such a pace.
Brutal,
it's like,
isn't it?
it's just straight into it, and there's no warm up. And if you're not, equipped with certain things or been exposed to it before, it can be a real problem, and it can cause damage, which we all know of. And that's that, soldiers that have that kind of mental breakdown or
just come back and
PTSD and are never the same. It's caused damage that's unrepairable.
But I take away some things there, and again, I suppose they're great reminders, aren't they, that when you're striving to do something in life that's challenging you, that you're scared about, that you're fearful about, is confront it, don't run away from it.
Absolutely, don't.
Breathe into it, go into it, deal with it. Which is easier to do when you're not in the battle of war, I know.
Yeah.
And build resilience to it, to the point where you've got acceptance to it, and it becomes your new norm.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and you've got to expose yourself to it, and you've got to front up to it, but you've got to have you've got to have the intelligence to also know what's going on. Inside your mind.
But because that's the scary thing as well, not also knowing what's in your mind. But if you try and normalise it too much, then that carries so much risk, doesn't it?
Yeah, don't normalise it too much. And it's a difficult one. There's a certain intelligence here, because you do have to understand what's going on, but you don't want it to become too, like some sort of norm, everyday thing. But also you don't want to be completely naive to what's going on, because that's when the opposite can happen, and you start having issues because you don't understand what's going on, and you can't rationalize things, and you can either make a silly mistake, or it's can have
all sorts of consequences.
Consequences, exactly. That's the word I was looking for.
And did you join the Marines thinking you wanted to become a Special Forces soldier?
No,
how did that all come about? Because very quickly after you joined the Marines, you went for training, didn't you? So tell us about how that came about, Toby.
So you're picking up on your listeners will pick up on a trend here. And that's, as soon as I found a next level that I could push, that I could push myself to, I was like, okay, boom, there's my target. Attack, get in there, get stuck in, don't shy away from it. And this is the trend you'll find throughout this podcast, actually, even when we go into my later years in business and so on and so forth. So when I was in Afghanistan the first time, I didn't even know the Special Forces existed. I thought the Royal Marine Commandos were sort of, the tip of the spear, as it was.
That's why you selected them in the first place.
Exactly. But as my knowledge grew, and as I found out more about the British military, I knew there was this upper echelon of soldier that was even tougher to achieve, and there was even even harder to get to, and their attrition rate was something phenomenal. I think it's something crazy. But so I started looking into it, and again, it just struck a chord with me, and I was like, wow, that's where I want to be. That's the place I need to be. And as soon as I got back from Afghanistan, I was just so keen. I was so keen. I had this energy and this fire. I put in for it straight away, and I started talking to my peers, and I was like, what do I need to learn? What do I need to...
who do I need to be?
Who do I need to speak to? How do I apply? And
do you apply? Is it like an application?
Not an application as such, no. It's more of a, are you suited, and are your peers willing to put you forward?
Right.
And yeah, so I spoke to the right people, and I got turned down a lot of times. A lot of them said, absolutely not. You need to serve probably 5 to 6 years, do 2 or 3 combat tours, and then see where you are, and then sort of put your name forward. Then you're certainly not some 2-year young Marine who is quite inexperienced. No, this just isn't the done thing.
It's not done. I can imagine totally how I know you. That made you
I
even
was
more
like,
determined.
I was like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean it's not the done thing? Does that mean that you can't do it? Does that mean it's impossible, or has it been done before? And they were like, yeah, it's been done before, but by very, very, very few people. You're talking less than a handful have ever passed at your age and with your experience. So I guess I begged and pleaded, and I was like, give me the shot. Just give me the shot, and I'll prove you wrong. Just give me that opportunity. Give me the opportunity. And I was very fortunate enough that they did.
Would have been so easy at that point, as I suppose, as we all go through life, isn't it? And we hear the word no, and how do we respond to that? And your response was actually that dogged determination, just to keep driving through, to keep asking, to make a pain of the arse of yourself, probably in some way, shape, or form, in the right way.
Yeah, and there is a bit of arrogance mixed in there. Yeah, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I'm not afraid to admit that there is a part of me that just, it's, maybe call it self-belief and arrogance. Ooh, fine line.
There is a fine line between that, isn't it? And we did an episode on ego. And how do you how does ego get in the way? But how does ego actually can help? There's good ego, bad ego.
Exactly.
But there is, like you say, this fine line, isn't there?
Very fine line. And I think I'm able to strike the balance.
Tread that line carefully.
Very, very carefully. And in business, you also need to tread that line very carefully.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're approaching investors or talking to potential partners or so on and so forth. The last thing you want to do is come across arrogant or cocky or egotistical. But at the same time, you do want to become across confident and sure of yourself and have that self-belief. So it's a
tightrope that many of us try and walk, and sometimes fall either side of at times, and perhaps don't show up in the right way and don't show enough of ourselves, and other times put on the show. And decisions and circumstances, meetings don't go the way we would kind of anticipate. So training for the Special Forces, how did that compare to training for the Marines?
I don't know. It's just completely different in so many aspects, because there's no... I mean, you do have a training team and a DS directing staff. However, they're watching from the outsides. They're not teaching you how to be a soldier. They expect you to be a soldier already, and they want to see you step it up.
Okay.
So really, they just put you into scenarios, and they want to see how you adapt and how you perform it's not okay, this is a rifle, this is how it works, this is how it functions.
It's not training.
It's not training as such, if you know what I mean. It's more, we want to see you now.
And can you remember
use your skills in the right way and become that? And are you the thinking man soldier? Have you got the skills, not just the physical skills? Because it's physically grueling, but physical aspects are quite easy to, and I say that lightly, but physical aspects, in a way, you just put your head down and you just got to get through it. You just grizz it out, as we'd say in the military.
Grizz it out.
Yeah, grizz it out. But you need to have an intelligence there, and
it's a mindset.
You need to have a smartness and a mindset to overcome challenges and obstacles, and still be able to perform psychologically under extreme duress, duress from nature and from psychological perspective.
And do you look back and do you still remember that day you passed the special forces training?
Probably one of the best days of my life. Absolutely, one of the best days of my life. The point where they told me, "Congratulations, you're now in, the special boys club, and you've achieved something that probably, I don't know, less than 1% of the world's population can achieve." And that shows you've got certain qualities that very few have. And that's, again, is not me being cocky or arrogant. That's just a fact. It is what it is.
That's the way it is, isn't it?
There's only so many people that can do that course and come through the other side. I think, just to give you numbers, I think 100 on my course, I think it was between 180 and 200 of the cream of the British forces started. So they take 200 of the best at that time, and only 8 of us passed at the end of it.
Wow.
Only 8 of us were left.
Put some context, what an achievement it is.
And four went to Hereford and 4 went to Poole.
Okay.
So 4 went to the SAS. And 4 went to the SPS, depending on your choice. You look at that, you take 200 of the best soldiers out of the entire British military, and then you hone that down to 8 people.
Wow.
It's pretty impressive.
You are part of a very small and elite
small
gang and team at that point, aren't you? And I assume immediately it was straight back into action.
Back into it. Again, the special forces have a very fast-paced cycle, which I can't talk too much about in terms of what is involved in that, but straight up back out on operations around the globe, around the world. And I found myself back in the thick of it, doing what, to be honest, what I loved doing, and that was soldiering.
Being a soldier, being the best, doing what you did. We need to talk about it, don't we? It's one of the focuses of the podcast, I suppose. Very soon after that, though, you were on a mission. And your accident, occurred.
That's right.
As far as you can, as far as you're able, could you tell our listeners a little bit about that mission?
Yeah, of course. So we were in a AO, area of operation, which I can't say, but it was in a foreign country, actually not Afghanistan, and we were after a high value target who was the upper tier of the Taliban regime, because we were there to sort of cut the head off the snake. And we go after the big players. And I remember the day. I remember going in for our brief, what we were doing that night, who we were after, going through the motions, how we were going to approach the target, making sure we had the right assets. And I remember going out on the ground, getting to the target, middle of the night, pitch black. And yeah, really, we were, at the time, we were told, look, there's women and children on target, so our normal method of entry, we had to kind of stand down on, and we had to then sort of think outside the box and think how are we going to do this. And you come across these problems, these are the sort of things you have to deal with. Yeah, it's part of it. And unfortunately, this then took the sort of risk of the operation a lot higher for us. But we as we were determined to get it done, and we were determined to follow through on what our job was. So basically, we turned to an ulterior method of entry, which kind of gave our position away, or gave the elements of surprise away, and that gave them that split second to set up, get set. And unfortunately, as we came through into the compound or the building, they had just had those few seconds to prepare, and we lost the elements of surprise, and they opened fire on us, and I was shot through the neck. Unfortunately, that hit my spinal cord and paralyzed me instantly from the neck down. However, very lucky to be alive. The second round ricocheted off the side of my helmet, which would have killed me instantly. And that's all I can really remember.
That's it.
But I have spoken to my colleagues about what happened afterwards, and things and the follow-on process. But that's the long and the short of it, really, unfortunately. But these things happen in life,
Very pragmatic kind of way of saying things, and I suppose we'll come on to telling the story. And so, what's the first moment that you do realise? Because I mean, when you tell the story in the book that you've heard through others, that it was your colleagues, those on the ground,
they got me out.
That brotherhood that saved you, that got you out of that situation, back to a military kind of camp, hospital, and then back to the UK. But what's the first moment you can actually remember?
The first actual moment I remember is waking up, albeit slightly hazy and quite, because I was still quite drug-induced from being in a coma. I remember waking up and just seeing 4 white walls and a glass mirror, or not a mirror, a glass sort of window in front of me, and all types of people staring at me, very confused, don't quite know what's happened, don't know where I am, not sure what's real and what's not. Reality's become very grey and vague, between that sort of dream world and so that's kind of the first things I start to remember. Familiar faces, although I'm confused because the last thing I remember is being in Afghanistan.
Right
now I'm seeing familiar faces of friends and people back in the UK. It's all very confusing.
Why are they in Afghanistan?
What's going on here? And what's happened? And then slowly but surely I start to be weaned off these coma-inducing drugs and other medications, and the clarity starts to come through and the the haze starts to clear,
Yeah.
and then you start to realize your situation, and it starts to dawn on you. It starts to dawn on you the implications of what's actually happened, which your brain can't actually process it all in one go. It's almost impossible.
Yeah. Understandable.
There's just too much to process, and you just don't know what it actually entails. Because it's unknown territory. So you're kind of just going into it blindfolded, and adapting as you go along, which again, luckily, I was quite well equipped to do.
Yeah, I suppose again, that childhood, that military life, that training, there you were ready to kind of
deal with the unknown. Yeah.
I just can't even imagine that, that moment when it must feel like, I suppose it's really hard to describe, that moment where you realise your life's not going to be the same, and that the things that you took for granted that you won't be able to. And did they break that news to you slowly, or was it so obvious to you as you came round?
No, it wasn't. Definitely wasn't obvious. It goes back to the previous question. You just don't know what the real implications are.
Yeah.
I mean, you get told the medical prognosis, and that's okay. You will never walk again. You are paralyzed from the neck down. You will be breathing on a ventilator, on a machine for the rest of your life. And you're like, okay, I can understand that from a physical sort of point of view. Yes, okay, I can't move my body again, but what does that actually mean moving forward? What can I do and what can't I do? You don't actually know. Those are only things you pick up along the way. And it takes you a long time to get your head around that. And that's an ongoing thing. Because I'm still learning, what I can and can't do. And what, the implications of my injury are. It's just a constant learning process. But one thing I will say is, if you go into it with the right mindset, you will be able to do a lot more than what you're told you can do. If you go into it with the right mindset, you can definitely do a lot more than what people say you can do.
Yeah, so that's the attitude,
That's
and
the
approach
attitude.
to have.
Yeah.
And when you reflect back now, because again, people, if they read the book, will see and hear of those hard years that you had, to the point at which you got to a level, I'm going to use the word acceptance. I don't know if that's the right word, or you kind of...
Yeah, it certainly, dulls down a bit, but no, everyone deals with things in different ways, let's face it. And I'm sure there are people who do come to that point of acceptance, but I personally don't want to reach that point of acceptance, because it almost seems like, not giving up, but just sort of lying down and accepting the way things are. It doesn't sit right with me.
No.
It's a funny one, but yeah.
It's brilliant mindset. Yeah, there is no, don't accept it, because if you accept it, you take it that's life, that's what it is, and you're not going to continue to push
you won't
the boundaries.
push yourself.
Push yourself,
exactly.
push the boundaries.
Absolutely.
Of what's possible. And I've got some great examples that we'll talk about in a moment of that. In that story, in that journey, is there a pivotal moment where you think something changed inside you, though, or you change your approach, or you had some help and assistance? Because again, we all go in nowhere near the dark places you've been, Toby, but everybody in life goes through their challenges in their dark place, and it's just like a fraction of what you've been through. But again, listeners might be able to take something away about the approach you took, about when you reach those darkest days and you turn the corner, what do you think you did differently?
I think I was. Well, yeah. When I reached my darkest moments, at first I didn't really know what to do. I think that was the first time in my life where I really didn't know what to do. And I think what I did differently for me was I then accepted the fact that I'm going to need help. And that was huge for me because my entire life I'd been self-reliant, and I'd only relied on myself. I didn't, I'd always kind of taken the approach of, or quite a hard line of, that's a last resort to ask for help.
Yeah.
But I realized I was in a situation where I didn't have the skills, and I didn't have the knowledge to get me out of where I am now. So the thing I did was, I really, I basically just put my hand up and said, look, I need help.
Brilliant.
I need help. That's the biggest thing I think I did. And I was fortunate enough to get the right help.
Yeah.
To just get me out of those dark places.
Moments.
But on me personally, I dug deep. I tried to remember the qualities that made me who I am today. I tried to hold on to those little flickers or embers of the fire inside me that used to burn so bright. I used to hold, and I was just holding on to that for dear life, and trying to throw as much kindle on it as possible to get it back going again. And that's what I did on inside me. I just remember thinking, what are the positives inside me? What can I contribute? What are the good things I can still do? Yes, physically, my physical side of me is taken away, but there's still things I can contribute, and I can help, and I can pass on skills and knowledge, and just try and hold on to the positives, And by that, that was throwing kindle on that fire, and it just slowly started to build up again, and with the help of others and professional help.
It doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight. It took me years and years and years of coming back slowly, rebuilding my life piece by piece, brick by brick.
Amazing. Great advice for anybody listening. And I sit here now, and so many of us don't put our hands up for help in everyday life and things that we're finding tough.
No, absolutely.
And so many of us probably don't value enough what's inside us, do we?
No, it's we live in a strange world.
And how do you cultivate that? And you've done all of those things to be where you are today, Toby. And we should talk about the now, shouldn't we? So, you've written a book, you have launched your own company, Bravery, some exciting things. Watch this space, listeners, happening there very soon. So let's start with Bravery, because it's been around for a little while. Tell us about what Bravery means to you and what you want to achieve and set out to achieve with the business.
I mean, the first and the best place to start is with the name, Bravery. I mean, it says it all in the name of the company. It's all about being brave, and it's all about everything we've just talked about. Finding that passion, finding that the spirit to push yourself out of your comfort zone, do things that are maybe not the norm, and building these great skills inside you. That's what the company is all about. That's what it represents. And the word bravery is just it's that it's puts it all into one word and one meaning, and it makes it very easy to see as a company. You know, when you see the name, you know exactly what it stands for, and you're like, wow, okay, yeah, that's powerful, that's punchy. And then it's a company that I built from my personal experiences and what I've learned throughout my life and what's helped me get to where I am today. So it's just a great company that has so many aspects to it. It's very hard to pin it down to like what exactly it is. I mean, you know, we do extreme sports and we're involved in that because that's a great example of how to push yourself out of your comfort zone and how to potentially do things that are a bit scary and build those resilience to fear. And those are great life skills that then later on in life you can then take into other aspects when you start your own business or you go into a room full of big businessmen and you're kind of the small fish in the pond. You know, you've built this resilience there, and this you're open to the fact of fear and things like that.
Yeah,
you know.
So, how have you found being starting your own business and running a business? I mean, how does it compare to your other challenges in life, Toby?
It's so different, and I've actually found it the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life.
In what way? Because you've done
I mean, that's it. You know, some things come more naturally to others than it does to yourself. And the military life and the hardship of that came quite easy for me. You know, there were things there that I found easy, but in the business world, there's so many aspects that I find so difficult and so hard to navigate.
Interesting. I suppose it's that nature-nurture thing. Again.
Yeah.
You're nurturing yourself into this world where it was nature what you did before, maybe.
I really have to try hard, you know. I really have to try hard at running a business and trying to be successful in the business world. It doesn't come naturally to me.
But you went and got yourself a first-class degree, didn't you?
I did. And again, that was completely out of my comfort zone, and I found it very hard. I pushed it. Yeah, you start with, you have to put yourself forward. Yeah. Definitely. That's the starting point. And then you just have to really keep going at it. And you will get setbacks and you will have points where you feel down because you feel like you've slightly failed or not done as particularly well as you thought. But if you keep the mindset of keep going, keep chipping away at it and learn how to pivot. If you find a problem or something you can't, like what you're doing is not achieving or you're not getting to where, then you need to find another way, an ulterior way of doing it.
Definitely.
You know, go seek help if you can't do it yourself. You know, if you're finding a particular topic or a particular subject or whatever difficult, and then think outside the box.
Yeah.
What can I do differently? Don't keep doing the same thing over and over again. You know, because that ain't gonna. You're just gonna come to the same result.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if it's not working, try something different. Yeah. And I find business and I find doing my degree, man, I find it hard. But every time I hit that problem or I was doing something that wasn't working, I would pivot.
I suppose it's a bit of that special forces military training kicking in, isn't it? Really, it's just don't accept
how do I
find
solve
a way, how do I solve it?
Yeah,
that's a real kind of problem stuff.
And maybe I'm not the best at this particular topic. Right, what have I got to do?
Go get myself educated. Go get myself more knowledgeable.
Exactly.
And off I go. Yeah.
Because I've seen it where people trip themselves up, and don't get me wrong, I've tripped myself up so many times, and there's so many pitfalls that I've fallen into, and I go, damn it, I should have learned from that. And that, I guess that's another thing is learn from your mistakes.
Definitely.
It's a big topic there. Learn from your mistakes.
Is business feeling more natural for you now?
More natural, but definitely not as easy as I found certain other aspects of my life.
I couldn't have done any of those
It's
other
hard. It's so
aspects.
hard. It is. It is
just that
unbelievable.
balance.
It's tricky
Yeah.
because business. There's so many. The military is quite straightforward. Business is not straightforward. It definitely is not straightforward. There's many ways around things and doing things. And what's the right way or the wrong way? There isn't really a right way or a wrong way.
No.
It's extremely complicated, and to become successful at it is arguably just as tough, to reach that small minority of people who've become very successful at business is extremely difficult, and you have to. Yeah, the people that think, it's going to come easy, and I'm just going to start a business and be successful and go on to have all the reward, are
It's a very small percentages of same as those kind of percentages you were quoting earlier on in the military life, isn't it? Really?
It must be close to it.
Yeah.
But you got to start with giving it a shot.
Yeah. And you've referenced the book a lot. I mean, how did you find going about, writing a book, being part of that kind of process? Was it therapeutic for you? Was it?
Yeah, it was
challenging.
It was all of those things really. At first, I mean, I didn't want to do it at first because in our circles, it's not actually the done thing.
No.
And it's kind of frowned upon in a way.
Yeah.
Talking about things that shouldn't really be talked about, and you've been exposed to parts of the world that shouldn't really be talked about. But it was actually my colleagues and close friends who said, yes, there is that aspect to it, but there's more to it, Toby. Your story is different because it can help a lot of people.
Yeah, I read the book and I didn't see it. It's not a military book.
Yeah, it's not a giving away secrets and talking about...
The military part is a very short part in the middle, really. It's the pre-story and the background and the post. And
there's a load of different layers to it.
It's definitely not a military book.
So that and then that gave me the push to actually do it.
Yeah.
And the thought that this could give a great insight to different aspects of life, not just giving away military secrets and talking about the biceps and bullets, there's so much out there. It's just completely, some of it's just rubbish and a lot of it is talking about stuff that shouldn't really be talked about, to be fair. And I'll say that because it gives away, you put at risk people's lives. You give government secrecy is secret for a reason. You put everyone's lives at risk, and it's secret for a reason. Yeah. So and
something even talking to you now again, it just resonates with me. You're still really proud to, even with what's happened to you and the the consequences it's had on your life.
Yeah.
To have served in the military, aren't you? And to be part of that brotherhood, that means the world to you.
Yeah, I'm extremely proud. It's a proud thing to be a part of. It's got such a history, and it's forged where we are today. So I'm proud to be a part of that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be a part of.
And you're even getting kind of these instances where you've been asked to go and speak and help motivate and tell your story to the likes of Sale Sharks, the rugby team.
That's right.
The Mercedes, the F1 team.
That's right.
These must be great experiences.
They are great experiences, but you can learn a lot from anything in life.
Yeah.
And I'm learning a lot about these experiences because I'm dealing with people that not a lot of people get to deal with, and I'm learning their way of life, and it's very different to, I think a lot of it is different to my life and the way that I see life. Seeing life through their lives is amazing, and it's also very incredibly fascinating. But And some things you agree with and some things you don't. But,
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Another great attitude.
It's crazy.
In that you're going there to talk to them, but you're going there more as much as the attitude as what you can give, but actually what can you learn?
Yeah.
That open mindset of, I'm going to speak to them, but what can I learn from them? Great attitude to have throughout life, isn't it?
And and that relates to the business world, and it's something I'm also doing, Warren, with the likes of yourselves and other colleagues we know. Every time I speak to business people or business guys who've been in it for a long time, they've been there, they've done it, they've been around the block. You need to learn from so you can take the knowledge and skills and apply it, so that you don't fall into the same pitfalls. And there's no shame in asking for advice or help. And that's one thing about the business world, because you can't know it all straight off, as confident as you might be.
Yeah, it's a journey, isn't it?
It's a journey.
Not a destination.
Yeah, and one of the great things is, get the right people around you, build that great scrum of people if you want to have a successful business, and go from there.
Brilliant. As we start to wrap up our conversation, there's some great pics I've seen of you, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Toby, of, floating in the sunshine in a swimming pool, riding in a sidecar, laid in a pool overlooking a beautiful sunset, being held by your partner, Savannah. There's some great moments I see. And again, I suppose I come back to, there must have been a point where you went, being paralysed, being on a ventilator. Those are all things that somebody in your position doesn't normally do. Is there just a whole approach and attitude that you've got of, the condition doesn't define me?
Yes, there is an approach and attitude I have to life, and that's, you only get one life, and you have to make the most of it. And I was very lucky to be given a second chance. Yeah. It was so close to being taken away from me. So I try my best, my utmost to appreciate every second that I've got and make the most of what I've got. It's hard to say. The injury does define me in a way, and I can never get around that. But I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. I really don't care. I want to make the most of my life. I want to make the most of what I got left. And that will be to continue to do what I've done throughout my life. Push the boundaries. Never give up. Keep that fire in your belly burning. And really just look around you and appreciate, how wonderful the world is and what you've got, because it can be taken away within a matter of seconds. So, don't just sit back and wait for life to come to you. Go out there and take it. Yeah. It's yours. It's yours for the taking. It really is.
So my hair on the back of my neck is standing up. That is so true about how we all should live our lives. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's meant a lot to me that you've sat down with me and you've been so honest, and you shared so much with me during the course of this conversation, Toby. Thank you. Thank you for being an incredible guest on the Evolve to Succeed podcast.
It's a pleasure, and
I should say, sorry listeners, I was just so moved, if I have to be, by what Toby was saying, and that resonated so much with me. I forgot to ask you, Toby, and I'm going to end the podcast with this, is if people want to learn more about bravery, they want to go and buy the book,
yes,
where can they go?
Yes.
We've got to end with that piece.
Of course, you've got to. So if you want to find out more about my story, I am on Instagram, Toby Gutteridge _official. You can find me on Facebook, and you can head over to the Bravery website, which is www.bravery.co.uk, and learn about what I'm doing. and where I'm moving in the future. So yeah, you can find it all out there. But yeah, please do go and get the book. It's a great story. You can get it on Amazon, Waterstones. You can get it on an audible version if you prefer. So yeah, it's all there.
Brilliant. Thank you, Toby. That is the best way to end the podcast. Thank you for being a great guest.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Evolve to Succeed podcast. My hope with every episode is that you've learned something new or heard something that challenged your way of thinking and further motivated you on your path towards becoming a more knowledgeable, informed and inspired individual and business leader. If you enjoyed this episode, then please help us by rating, reviewing and subscribing. We really value your feedback and would love to have you along for future episodes. And please don't forget to learn more about Evolve by going to evolvemembers.com. Thank you for listening. See you next week.